Magic 87.6, morning Andrew on the radio. Mathew Dickerson, hello.
Yeah, good morning, Andrew. Great to be chatting again.
Always a pleasure, mate. Now, this is kind of weird because many years ago, we bought a Toshiba laptop and they were great machines, but if you want to upgrade to one now, it's a no-go.
It's a no-go, and I'm shattered by that because I was a huge Toshiba fan until the very notebook I've got now. I had Toshiba notebooks for probably about 10, maybe 15 years. Love the Toshiba notebooks. They were the ones that really broke the ground in that whole notebook space. But unfortunately, just this week, they've sold the last remaining share of the whole notebook range to Sharp. And they sold a couple of years ago about 80% of the notebook business to Sharp. And I'm not sure why they sold 80%. It seems like a strange number to sell. But anyway, they sold 80%. They've just sold the last 20% to Sharp. So Toshiba notebooks are no more. And I remember the first ones that I sold, Andrew, they were mono screen. They were big chunky things. They had a 3.5-inch floppy drive in the side of them. But they were so expensive that I was selling them, but I couldn't afford one myself. I kind of dreamed of this idea that one day I'd sell enough of these Toshiba notebooks that I might be able to afford one myself. And I finally got to that stage and then got very flash when the colour screen came out. So I've been around there with Toshiba notebooks for a long time, but unfortunately, that's it. They're dead. They're gone.
Yeah, Gonskis. We had one, my wife had one actually, around 2009-ish.
Right.
And I remember we used it for everything. They were Toshiba Compact it was. Blackwell. We've actually still got it. It still works. The battery's dead in it. It's slow as a dog, but it still works. But I used it for DJing one night, and these things are rock solid. They were thick as a brick. You used it, audio editing, everything. They were great machines, Toshiba. But I suppose over time, HP and Apple having its resurgence really have done it some damage.
Well, I think there's a whole range of reasons. One is a lot of competitors in the market, but the other part is just the tablets. I mean, a lot of people now are using tablets instead of a PC to take care of lots of the things that people would do. And DJing, you mentioned that. I mean, a lot of people use tablets for their DJing now. But if you go back about 9 years, about 2011 was their peak. They were selling 17.7 million PCs a year, and it got down by 2017. So only in 6 years, it got down to only 1.4 million. So a pretty big drop. But again, if you mapped the tablet sales in that period, you'd see that huge growth in tablet sales as those notebook sales started to drop off.
Yeah. New car brands hitting the market. Hyundai, what are they doing?
They're confusing the market. I'm a bit of a fan of Hyundai. I like some of the models they've got coming out. They've got a couple of electric models. They've got the Hyundai Kona. But just to confuse everyone, they've got a Hyundai Ioniq. And it comes in 3 different versions, just a petrol-only version, a hybrid, and an electric version. But now they've introduced an entire range of electric vehicles, and they've got their own brand for it called Ioniq. Spelt the same way as the Hyundai Ioniq. But the Hyundai Ioniq is not part of the Ioniq range, if that makes any sense at all, Andrew. It doesn't make sense to me at all. So they've got 3 cars coming out in the Ioniq range, all electric, obviously. The Ioniq 5 is coming out next year. There'll be an Ioniq 6. By 2025, they'll have 3 specific car models, all electric, and they won't include the current Hyundai Ioniq. So go and make some sense of that, will you?
It's kind of ironic if you think of it in that way.
Oh, you've been working on that for the last 30 seconds, haven't you?
Haven't I ever? Oh, jeez. If I'm going to take another line out of the Alanis Morissette song, it'll make you think. But anyway, I'm not going to go there. I love it when medicine and science kind of come together, and technology as well, and they're tackling heart disease with a very small, tiny thing, aren't they, Matt?
They are, with a tiny thing. And Andrew, the greatest thing about this one is that it's Aussies leading the charge. Now, we've got some pretty big problems with cardiovascular disease. There's one Aussie that dies about every 19 minutes, I think, at the moment, which is pretty bad. And that's replicated around the world with lots of people dying of cardiovascular disease. But researchers at the University of Adelaide and the University of Stuttgart have gotten together and they've done a bit of 3D printing. You know, you can buy 3D printers everywhere. They're pretty cool fun. But they've printed a little tiny camera lens that's about 0.457 millimetres in diameter. And they're sticking that on the end of a bit of fibre cable, and they're sticking that down through, at the moment, the veins of mice looking at the heart of a mouse. And obviously the idea is to stick it down the veins of humans and look at the blood vessels and the fat and the cholesterol building up in hearts and try and work out better ways to attack this problem we've got, which is a huge killer across the world of people. So try and work out some way to reduce the amount of deaths that are caused by cardiovascular disease. And they believe by looking at the fats, by looking at the cholesterols, by looking at the walls of those vessels, we can actually work out better ways to attack the problem. So yeah, absolutely, technology and medicine coming together in very tiny little things to hopefully come up with very big solutions.
Yeah, it's amazing what they can do right now. Now, I saw this on my social media feed the other day, man. This is big news. Apparently, Apple's upset over a pear. Isn't it? Fruit is fruit.
Look, this is classic Apple, and whenever someone potentially threatens or they think might threaten some part of their trademark, their name, their logo, whatever, they go to town. And when you've got a $1 trillion company, you've normally got a couple of solicitors sitting around with nothing to do for the day, so they like to go out and attack these little guys. And this little company has got 5 people in it, and they've got a little pear rather than an apple, and the little pear has got maybe the top of it angled across a little bit that, if you get at the right angle, squint your eyes and have 10 beers, I reckon you might confuse the 2 logos. But for most people...
Oh, come on.
They could probably tell them apart, I reckon. But Apple's gone to town. Yeah. They've sent some legal documentation to this company, Prepare, to say basically cease and desist. You've got to stop using that logo. You've got to change your logo because it's too close to ours, and we're not allowing, or not that they can allow, but they're objecting strongly to the registering of this particular trademark. I suppose the only bright side of this is that if you're a small company and Apple came out and hit you with all guns blazing, it's probably pretty good publicity. So here we are talking about this company, Prepare. I've never heard of them before this, but they're getting a bit of publicity out of the fact that Apple's actually hitting them hard.
Maybe I should change the name of the radio station to Apple 87.6. Can we do that? Can we all go?
I reckon if you did that,
maybe I could get some money.
And had a logo that looked vaguely like Apple's logo, I reckon they'd be down like a ton of bricks.
I reckon we're onto something here, man. I get your people to call my people. We'll do a logo.
Sounds good.
Now, the dish, we love the dish, and it's gotten some status with it as well.
It's been added to the National Heritage List. Now, most people that live in this area have been to the dish at some stage, school excursion, driving across over to parks, whatever it might have been. But of course, it was exposed to a much wider audience when it was featured in the film The Dish, obviously back in 2000. And again, that's when most people learn about the involvement that the dish had in the 1969 moon landing and involving in getting those communications back across the world. So it's been a part of our science and our overall landscape for a long time, but finally made it to the National Heritage List. Back in 1961, the dish was built, and my favourite story about the dish, I was over there a couple of years ago doing a little bit of filming for a project that I was doing, and I spoke to them, and they told me the funny story about the time when they thought they'd started to pick up some alien life. They'd actually started getting these transmissions that were very different to anything that they were picking up out of the natural universe, and there were lots of scientists working on it and working feverishly on it until they finally realised that the signals they were receiving coincided very strangely when some of the staff there were drinking coffee, because the microwave oven they had a fault and it was leaking microwaves and it was being picked up by the dish.
Wow.
So they had all this excitement about alien life being picked up, but it was just a faulty microwave oven. So anyway, it's being immortalised now as a National Heritage item, which is a fair bit of work to go through to get to that point. So I think, again, it'll keep continuing being used for science, keep continuing to be used as a tourist attraction, but now the 118th site to be added to the register.
That's huge. When I went there a couple of years ago as well, all I wanted to do was go on a hayride on the dish and see if I could play cricket on it. Because the movie, you watch the movie and that's what they do on it. They're playing cricket on the dish, and they're going for what they call a hayride. And all I wanted to do every time I went there was sit there and go, who decided to put this in the middle of a bloody sheep paddock? My wife goes, can you stop doing that? You're just becoming annoying now.
Can you imagine the tourism they'd get if you could actually play cricket on the dish? If that was an extra feature they offered, come and pay $10 to come in, but pay $100 to go and play cricket on the dish, I reckon there'd be people lined up all the way back to Parks.
I know, right? I know. I'd be there. The Dish is the only movie I actually went and saw twice at the cinema. I loved it so much the first time. I went back and saw it the second time. But mind you, I was living in Inverell at the time, and it was probably the most exciting thing to do in Inverell 2 nights in a row. So,
hello to all your listeners in Inverell.
Yeah.